The 5/8 position is up next for NRL Supercoach. It's going to be a very interesting position this year, given last year we had a very limited amount of options. Cam Munster was the second best option. He was coming off, or is he actually going to play? Is he going to be 80%? And Dylan Brown was sort of the better option at a very expensive price. He's down a lot cheaper by 9 points there on his average this year, and he's still the most expensive guy on the list. You had a few others that seemed okay, and it was probably start with Burton might have been at the actual play, and he even started slow. So this year there seems to be a lot more guys putting their hand up as a potential option for you in your side, and it got all the way down to 10 options, which is going to be fun, very similar to that of the fullback position, which I hope you went and checked out. That was a very fun one to make there, with some small differences between certain players. And we come into the 5/8 position with Dylan Brown up top with the halfback duel, similar to that with Jerome Luai, who is a little bit cheaper, down in our fifth player that we will be going over. And Dylan Brown, we're going to be going through his pros, his cons, his upside, his downside, and my verdict on how good of a player he's going to be out of 10 there. So for his pros, he is cheaper than last year by 9 points, so that's massive. And the dual position is obviously great as well. To earn that earlier on last year when Moses was out is actually a big win for this year. And last year wasn't the right time to pick him, but maybe this year is. And I owned him to begin last year, and this year I'm probably going to fade him at this point. But he looks like a guy that if the Eels actually do play a little bit better, he looked okay for the majority of last year and great at other times, but he could definitely have room for improvement just on that in itself. That they were pretty poor, he was okay, coming off a lot of issues in last the back end of the year prior and in off season. He'll be looking to get things off on the right track, and it's just going to depend as well where we see Lomax. And if we see Lomax on his left hand side, that's going to be great for his prospects as well. So his cons: Moses is back, which means he doesn't start at 7, and we've seen him score well in the 7 position as well as the 6. So stats-wise, it's not going to make a tremendous amount of difference. It's more going to be around how the team goes and who he has on his left-hand side, because we know that combination with him and Sean Lane was absolutely incredible. That wasn't to be last year. He didn't ever really have a great combination on his left-hand side there. And we've seen in other years, he's had Isaiah Papali'i, in that team in general. The other con with him is obviously no goals. So when you're looking at a half, you want them to be kicking goals, and you do see that with Matt Burton as a little difference there. But his upside, he has the 8 out of 10 in my books. He didn't hit it as much last year as he did the year prior, obviously with that 9 points of a discount, and he can definitely get back to that. And usually you do see the consistency out of Dylan Brown, which is a big win from him. And then the downside is 4 out of 10, just because do they spend a lot of their time going right? He had a little bit of a down year last year. Do we see more of that? Potentially. Do we see him going up to where he was the year prior? That's where the upside is. And that's why we give him an 8 out of 10 verdict. It's a 40% chance he kind of hangs the same or goes under, and the 60% chance I think he goes above that or scores well for you at the correct time. So an 8 out of 10 for Dylan Brown seems a pretty fair verdict. Matt Burton actually made my side, if you haven't seen that video yet. He's in my current iteration of the squad and doesn't have the dual position of Dylan Brown, so that's a small loss at the beginning there. The wins, on the other hand, he has the goals, right? That's a big one, obviously. And his team is improving year to year. Last year was a massive win for him and for his team. They started pretty poor last year, and he had a lot of low scores to begin that year. If you're looking at his last 4 seasons, it's 66, it's 57, 57, and the 66. So with that improvement in the Dogs season, you did see a 9-point upgrade on his scoring. With him being the main guy in a really improving good side, I see him finally eclipsing that 70 barrier. That's my call. That's my thoughts for the year. And that's where the reasoning is for me starting with Matt Burton. At this point of the season, the preseason, I should say, that's where he's at. And the durability, the ability for him to play almost every game of every season, apart from when it came to that concussion in the final series there. But yeah, I just think with him starting a little bit slower to begin last year, being paired with Hutchison, it just wasn't really working for them. They finally got into a groove, and he played really well next to Toby Sexton. So I see him starting a lot better this year. And then on the con side of things, there's not much, to be fair, just apart from that potential slow start and his ability to not get out of and ahead of that 70 average season, which is something that Dylan Brown has. In the year before, he absolutely crushed that. He gone from 66 in this year just gone. He was 75 the year before Dylan Brown, which is absolutely massive. So I think that's where Burton can go this year. We'll have to see how it plays out, but that's my call. And he's my best 5/8 to start with, in my opinion, just off the call. Yeah, it could just be the same, but the durability I think would be good enough anyway. If he was to average 66 and play most games, then it's still a win in my books for a non-Origin guy. Munster. Cam Munster, 609k. So his pros is he hasn't averaged under 70 in over 4 seasons. So the 62 this year was an anomaly. And obviously it had to do with his groin and where he's at with that. He had, the groin affected game where he was riding around on the turf. I think it was at Magic Round actually when I was there watching. Yeah, I believe so. I think it was just where we were. We actually saw Payne Haas at Magic Round run off with that issue as well. Oh, sorry, get limped off, carried off, whatever it was. But anywho, that's where the upside lies, is that he just doesn't average under 70. And he's not a guy that has tremendous upside, like of going back to back hundreds, but he has that sort of 75, 85, 103, that kind of realm where he can fit in and doesn't have the goals, obviously, but he's in a great team. And with that pedigree, if he actually comes into the season in a lot better shape, we've seen it with, Andrew Johns had issues with his groin, and it took a while to get that back to full health. And if that is the case coming into this season, I could see him gelling with Sean Bloor a little bit more down that left-hand side and working with his Jack Howarth and these types of guys. And Munster could be an absolute steal at 609k. It's just that round 2 bye. And in this case, you'd probably want to pair him with another decent 6 if you were to look at Luai or something like that, or if you had him and Burton, that could really work with him missing round 2 for sure. So the upside for him, he has the highest upside of the lot, 8.7 for him. The downside sitting probably at a 4. I think given his price is 40, 50k cheaper than the other two, that gives him an extra point on the downside, being not as high. But the injury concern compared to Brown and Burton is the one that you have to worry about, along with that round 2 bye to get off to a good start. But across the season, I see him potentially being one of the better picks. I'm just looking personally for a better start, and that's where Burton comes in for me. But a great team and a verdict of 8 out of 10. So the top 3 guys at price are all 8 out of 10s in my book. As a Cowboys fan, I'm excited to see how Tommy Dearden goes, and I'm glad that he's not leaving, and we have the worries of Robson leaving next year, obviously. And the pros with Dearden, I think he's improving each and every year. He's 3 points up last year, which is not a massive increase, I should say. It's his team now, in my opinion. It has to be. The other worries are the team potentially on the decline. Then you've got no Val Holmes next to him on that left-hand side, and he does lose Lukey now on that left-hand side, and it could be Bateman, it could be Kai O'Donnell. I'm unsure how that one's going to play out, but they're the worries there, along with Drinkwater in that previous video you would have saw with the fullbacks. That's my worry with him. It's just the slight decline, but it's up to these two and Robson to really steer the ship in attack anyway. So Dearden has never had the tremendous upside, so we're popping him at a 6 there, and his downside's at a 3. Like we're not worried about injuries with him. Very consistent type of guy. Just doesn't have the big upside in Supercoach and is close to guys like Munster and Price. So a 7 out of 10 for Tom Dearden, but I am excited, and I think he's going to have a really big year, but going off to Origin and all these things to think of as well. With Jerome Luai, $582,000 for him with the halfback duel is massive, and the big pro is it's his team now. He moves over to the Tigers, leaving Nathan Cleary. And we saw what he was able to do when it was his team, albeit for a better team, in the Panthers. But at 7, he had 3 tons in a row, which is absolutely incredible. So he has that ability to have the big scores, and he's just under that upside number of Munster with an 8.5 here for Jerome Luai, in my opinion. His cons is that he's got no goal kicking and he's not the Panthers anymore. If things go really well, then I think he's a steal at 582. At worst, I think he probably sits at 582. So that's where the downside is. It's just the Tigers, and we've seen people fall off when they move to the Tigers in terms of their scoring. But he just feels like a different guy, and they're building, and they've got some good outside backs. You've got Stafford Toa who's going to come back from all these injuries, Adam Dewey, and you bring over Skelton, you bring over Taruva. There's a lot of good things happening there. He's partnering with Galvin. He's got Api Coruscant. There's plenty happening on the good side for that team, and if he can come out and turn this team around, then I think he's a steal. If it doesn't work out as well, then he probably sits 550 to 600, and it was a bit of a meh pick. So still an 8 out of 10 for Jerome Luai. Cody Walker, 559, 800 is his price. For him, the team improvement, I think they can't really go too much worse than last year, so that's a big pro with a few guys coming back. Gets a 7 next to him, whether it's Humphreys or Dodd. I think it's likely to be Dodd at this point. Seems like a pretty fun player, and Walker hopefully will be able to just sit out on his left side, his favourite left side, and work with Whiten this year. Didn't work as well last year. Had to move around a fair bit. He played some 7. He's a little bit older as well, so that's a worry with him. But he had his tied lowest average, 57 it was a couple of years ago. And he's 12 points down from 69 that he was in 2023. So that's, there's ability there for him to go back to that, which is a big pro, and is why he has a nice 7.5 out of 10 upside. He doesn't have the big tons in him, I think, like he used to. But the cons for him, he has lots of 30s and 40s, and he's 34 years old now. So the 30s probably makes sense with that one for sure. But the downside for him is the 4 out of 10, just because of his price. You can't really have him too poor on the downside. And then the verdict, it's a 7 out of 10. I think he is someone that you could easily start with and it work out well. He could easily pump out a bunch of 30s and 40s and then a random 70 and just be okay to begin. So either way, I think it could work out. You could also miss the mark on that one too. Lukey Metcalf at 443. His pros, he's like the likely goal kicker, at a really nice price, an attacking player, and someone I started with last year, and he did well for a couple of weeks for me before petering out, obviously, with that injury. I did sell him and held Dylan Brown, so that was a bit of a win. But the cons for Metcalf is obviously the injuries. He just can't get through a season, unfortunately. He's such a talented guy, but just can't do it. And we're unsure how the team's going to go. Tohu Harris is just retired, which is tough for the club as well. And it's going to be a battle of the 3. Does he actually get the spot with Tomato Martin there, and also Tanner Boyd as well? And I've actually left Tomato Martin out of there. I just feel like he's way too expensive. Can go really well, but that you're looking at the Warriors having to to play really well, and he's so expensive. So I've left him out of this list, and he's on there as well if you want to have a look at him. But the upside for Metcalf at that price is 7.5 out of 10. If things go well, but the downside's sitting there at 4 as well. And obviously if he gets injured at 443, it's not going to kill you, but he does have that downside of the injuries and just how the team's going to go. So I actually have him at a 7.2. I think he's a really solid guy to have in your second 5/8 slot. Wouldn't be starting with a cheapie, I don't think, but an easy guy to have at number 2. If you're looking to save some cash to not go 2 guns and use that cash elsewhere that you might, you could leave out a Luai, or you could leave out a Burton or Munster or these kind of guys and get Metcalf and use that cash elsewhere. Kyle Flanagan, he comes in next up at 403k, 403,800. The pros for him, is he the main guy this year with Ilias? I think that he probably is, given he's he's been there a couple of years now, and Ilias has just come over. It's going to be a fun team. Val's going to be on his left, which is cool as well. There's plenty of attacking weapons down that left-hand side, which will be plenty of fun for sure. The cons for him, I think, he could just plod at a bit of a mid-range price, and he's got the fairly early buy there in round 2, round 3, whatever it is. Sorry, round 3 after Storm. That was silly. But yeah, at that price point, doesn't have the huge upside. I got him at a 6 there, just at the price. I think he can be solid, get up to that sort of 500k or so. Downside's not super high at that price, to be fair, and a 6.9. I think if he can be the guy on that left-hand fun side, I think that a 403, it's not the worst price at all. Tanner Boyd comes in next at number 9, and he is going to be an interesting one. He's so cheap, 329, 600, has the dual with halfback as well, and he's a chance to start. If he manages to get that starting spot, then at 329k, people will select him, and it makes complete sense. But I think he's likely third in line right now, and there's a reason he's down at that price, and things didn't work out for him as well as he would have liked at the Titans. He can be very hit and miss. He could kick goals if he does start, so that's the good side of it. So the upside's there at the price is 6 out of 10, and the downside is about a 3. If he gets that start, happens to lose it, you could pivot to another cheaper guy and use his dual and stuff like that. So 6.5 out of 10 if he gets the spot. If he doesn't, way lower. And then to finish things off is Will Price at 310k. The pros for him is he has upside. He's an attacking player, which is great. It's exactly what we want for Supercoach, and it's his second year in the system. So you'd imagine a decent amount of improvement in just his game in general, but learning the plays from the team and how things go. But Knights and their halves, they had 5 different halves and so many different combinations across the year. So it's hard to trust anything that comes out of that club in regards to halves. That's for sure, and he's likely to probably be 3rd or 4th in line at this stage, with Cogger likely to get the keys, and his partner is the unsure one. There's plenty of guys that can take it, but I think at that price point, if he managed to get the start at 310k, he has tremendous upside at 8 out of 10, with the downside being about a 4, because just more for the fact that he could lose his spot fairly quickly, and then a verdict for him is a 6 out of 10. If he was to get the spot, he'd probably lock that in higher, but I just think he's unlikely to get the spot. He's probably close to 4th in line, so that's where the 6 out of 10. But if he was to get that spot, it's probably up at that sort of 7 or 8, if they were to trust him a little bit as well, I think. So maybe we'll leave it at 6.5 with Tanner at this point. And the 5/8s, it's a very interesting section, and thanks so much for being here to the end of this video, guys. You're absolutely, and podcast, you're absolute legends. Make sure you do check out the podcast. It can be a nice and easy way to go through this as well. It doesn't have to be through YouTube. I earn the same through both. So thanks for helping me out with that one as well. But with their strategies, you're looking at, could you go gun? Definitely, I think. I'm probably going to add that as well. The 2 guns. Where do you go? Burton and Luai, which is actually how I'm looking at the moment. Once I first did my team, I was like, I really like the upside on those 2 guys. So I didn't actually have them as a strategy when I first put this together. But the gun and mid-range, whether it's, Burton and Luke Metcalf, or Munster and Luke Metcalf, that kind of play, or Flanagan, you can go the gun at a cheapie. So one of those top guys, Brown and Will Price, or a Tanner Boyd or something like that, if things present for sure. And I do think it's a much better position than it was last year. And I don't think you can go wrong with many of these guys. Like I've got in bold is how I sort of played it if they had a decent amount of value, if they got the spot. I ended up bolding all of them because I think you could select all of them and any of them and be fine. So that's the 5/8 in this video. Thanks so much for jumping in. I hope this is helping you with creating your early preseason teams. And if you haven't got SC Plus yet, where you're getting a good insight into all of the prices that we got going on there, and a general idea on how to put a team together. I think that'll come out in the next few weeks, and we'll have a lot more people watching these videos, which will be good fun. But thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in that next preview of the next position.